The Dome of Titans was more than a mere battleground. It was a coliseum of death, where the strongest warriors across the galaxy fought not for glory, but for survival. The air vibrated with roars, cheers, and the occasional guttural screams of warriors whose luck had run out. It was a place where only the strongest survived, and the weak were eradicated in brutal, merciless displays of violence. The Krogonath Juggernauts thrived here. They were not just warriors, they were monuments of destruction, gods of combat forged in the fires of war. Towering 9 feet tall, their hulking, armor-plated bodies resembled walking fortresses. Their muscles were dense as steel, their bones nearly unbreakable, and their reflexes unnaturally fast for creatures of their size. No species had ever defeated a Krogonath in one-on-one combat, not in recorded history. And today, they were eager to add another corpse to their pile. Because their next opponent? A human. The arrival of the human. The stadium shook with anticipation as thousands of alien spectators filled the Colosseum stands, their grotesque faces twisted in bloodthirsty excitement. Some species had mandibles clacking eagerly, others had eye stalks twitching as they placed their bets. Over 10,000 had gathered to witness the spectacle, their collective voices merging into a deafening, guttural roar. Near the center of the arena stood a group of Krogonath warriors, their massive weapons glinting under the artificial sunlight. Their armor was adorned with scars from previous battles, trophies of fallen enemies welded into their plating, skulls, broken blades, even severed alien spines. They stood unmoving, exuding pure dominance. Yet their faces were twisted into expressions of amusement, their deep, rumbling laughter echoing across the stadium. "Are they serious?" one Krogonath sneered, his voice like grinding stone. "They actually sent a human," another bellowed. "A weak species of flesh and bone." "This will be over in seconds," rumbled the largest of them, Brax the Butcher, his crimson war axe resting on his shoulder. "I will rip his spine from his body before he has a chance to scream." The audience cheered, chanting the Juggernauts' names. Then, the gates opened. A single figure stepped forward. Dane Carter, the human, the lone warrior. He looked small, laughably small compared to the monsters before him. Standing at a mere 6 feet, he was nothing but flesh and bone, his only protection a thin layer of leather armor, reinforced with makeshift plating. No shields. No cybernetic enhancements. No power armor. He was bare compared to the walking tanks that surrounded him. The crowd laughed. Dane didn't react. He simply walked forward, each step slow, measured. His expression was calm, his deep blue eyes scanning the battlefield. His hair was cropped short, his face scarred from battles long before this one. A knife rested at his side, strapped to his leg, alongside a curved gladiator's sword, a blade far too small to do any real damage to the Juggernaut's thick armor. To the spectators, it was a joke. To Dane, it was just another mission. A soldier, not a gladiator. Dane Carter wasn't born in the pits. He hadn't grown up among slaves, training with crude weapons for a chance to win his freedom. He was a soldier. Once part of Earth's Special Forces, he had fought in the dark wars of the frontier, leading teams into hostile worlds, eliminating high-profile targets, and surviving against impossible odds. He had endured death traps, ambushes, and impossible missions. But none of that prepared him for what happened next. Captured by slavers. Sold like an animal. Forced into combat, week after week, as aliens gambled on his survival. Dane had survived months in the pits. And unlike the others, he wasn't just fighting to live. He was waiting, watching, learning. Because today was different. The battle begins. The announcer's voice boomed across the stadium, crackling through the ancient speakers. Witness the slaughter of a Terran. Let the games begin. A loud horn blasted across the Colosseum. The gates slammed shut behind Dane. There was no escape. Brax the Butcher stepped forward, cracking his massive knuckles. His crimson axe gleamed in the sunlight, its jagged edge designed to tear through flesh, not cut. "I'll make this quick, human," Brax sneered, raising his weapon. "One swing. You'll be in 2 pieces." Dane exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders. His fingers flexed, adjusting his grip on his sword. "Yeah," he muttered. "Let's see you try." Brax charged. The ground shook under his steps. His axe swung downward with a force that could have split boulders in half. The audience roared, already expecting to see the human's body split in two. Dane moved. Not back. Forward. A blur of speed. He ducked under the swing, rolling past Brax's side before the axe slammed into the date, kicking up a cloud of dust. The Kroganatha's sheer strength caused the entire arena floor to quake. But Dane was already behind him. Brax snarled, jerking his axe free. Slippery insect. Too slow. Dane's knife flashed, striking low, right between the thick armor plates at the back of the alien's knee. The blade sank in deep. Brax howled. Dark alien blood spurted into the sand. The crowd gasped, their amusement vanishing in an instant. Brax staggered, fury in his eyes. You. Dane didn't give him time. With brutal efficiency, he ripped the knife out and twisted, bringing his curved sword upward, slicing deep into Brax's exposed throat. A spray of black blood exploded into the air. Brax gurgled, clutching his neck, stumbling backward. Then, with a heavy thud, the Kroganath Juggernaut collapsed. Dead. Silence falls. For the first time in the arena's history, the crowd fell silent. Their champion, one of the unstoppable Kroganath warriors, lay motionless in the sand. A human had killed the Juggernaut. In seconds. The remaining warriors staggered back, disbelief in their eyes. Dane wiped the blood from his blade and turned to them. His voice was calm. Who's next? The Dome of Titans was no longer filled with laughter. Silence hung in the air like a corpse on a noose, suffocating the once boisterous crowd. Thousands of alien spectators, who had come expecting the quick and brutal execution of a mere human, now sat in stunned disbelief. A Kroganath Juggernaut, one of the galaxy's unstoppable warlords, lay dead at Dane Carter's feet. And he had barely broken a sweat. The roar of vengeance. The silence was broken by an oath-shaking roar. The remaining Kroganath warriors snapped out of their trance, their yellow reptilian eyes burning with murderous fury. Brax the Butcher had been one of their finest. A champion, a leader, a brother. And now he was just a lifeless husk, his black blood pooling in the sand. Dane didn't move. He just stood there, calm and patient, rolling his shoulders like a man who was just getting warmed up. He dies slow, one of the Kroganath growled, gripping the haft of a warhammer the size of a small car. No, another barked. This one, taller than the rest, wore armor that was black as obsidian, lined with crimson sigils. A commander. We do not give him a warrior's death. We break him. Slowly, piece by piece. A deep, guttural chant rose from the stands, an ancient war cry in the Kroganath tongue. It was a blood debt, a vow that Dane would not leave the arena as anything but a mangled corpse. The announcer's voice boomed across the stadium. The human has defied fate. But fate is not so merciful. Let the slaughter continue. The horns bled again. The fight wasn't over. It was just getting started. Surrounded, Dane tightened his grip on his curved sword, shifting his stance slightly. He didn't waste his breath on taunts or bravado. Words wouldn't save him here. The remaining 3 Kroganaths spread out, surrounding him in a triangle formation, their massive weapons raised. Torvak the Thunder, a behemoth wielding a warhammer with a head as large as Dane's entire torso. One hit would turn him into paste. Krogath the Flayer, a scarred monster, brandishing a chain whip tipped with razor-sharp spikes. One strike would rip flesh from bone. Va Rock the Red, the commander, a towering warrior with a twin-bladed glaive that could cut through steel. He was the most dangerous of them all. Dane exhaled slowly. 3 on 1. Ho, he muttered. That's hardly fair. For you. The first attack. Torvak charged first, his warhammer coming down like a meteor, the sheer force sending a shockwave through the sand. Dane wasn't there. He had already moved, sidestepping the impact by mere inches, feeling the heat of friction as the hammer slammed into the earth. The ground shattered, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. Dane used it. He sprinted low, his blade whistling through the air. Torvak let out a howl of rage as cold steel sliced deep into his calf, severing tendons. He stumbled, his massive body buckling. But Dane didn't get time to finish. The whip came next. A sharp whistle, the only warning before barbed metal lashed through the dust, aiming for Dane's neck. His reflexes saved him. At the last second, he twisted, arching his body backward, dodging the main strike, but not completely. The barbs caught his shoulder, tearing a chunk of flesh away. Pain fled through his nerves, hot and sharp. Dane gritted his teeth. Pain was nothing new. He didn't stop moving. With a boast of speed, he rushed forward, cutting the distance between him and Krogoth. The Kroganath tried to retract his whip, but Dane was already inside his reach. The human's blade flashed, slicing through the thick tendons of Krogoth's whip arm. A howl of agony erupted from the alien warrior as his hand went limp, the deadly weapon falling uselessly to the ground. But before Dane could finish him, Vierok was there. The commander's glaive came in from the side, a blurring arc of death. Dane barely had time to react. He threw himself backward, the twin-bladed weapon missing his throat by mere inches. Even then, the shockwave from its passing sent him skidding across the sand. Vierok didn't let up. He was on him instantly, his glaive a whirlwind of death. Dane was fast on the defensive, ducking, dodging, and weaving as the lethal steel came at him from every angle. Vierok was different from the others. Faster. Smarter. He wasn't swinging wildly like the others. He was calculating, watching Dane's footwork, analyzing his movements, looking for the kill shot. And Dane knew it. He was running out of options. Then his eyes flicked to Torvak's hammer, still buried in the ground. A plan formed instantly. The kill shot. Dane pivoted hard, baiting Vierok into another glaive strike. The alien took it, lunging forward, exactly what Dane wanted. At the last second, Dane rolled sideways, his foot kicking up a cloud of sand, blinding the Kroganath for a half-second. That was all he needed. Dane lunged, not at Vierok, but at Torvak's hammer. His fingers closed around the weapon shaft, his muscles straining as he wrenched it free from the ground. Vierok's vision cleared just in time to see the massive warhammer swinging toward his face. Crack. The sound was sickening. The warhammer's impact caved in the entire left side of Vierok's skull. His yellow eyes bulged for a brief moment before his head exploded in a spray of black gore. The crowd gasped in horror. The Kroganath commander was dead. The aftermath. Torvak and Krogoth were both wounded, staggering in pain and disbelief. Dane stood over Vierok's mangled corpse, gripping the blood-stained hammer, his body slick with sweat and alien blood. The crowd, once filled with laughter, was now a hushed, horrified mass. Dane spat blood onto the sand. He turned to the remaining warriors, eyes cold. "You should have killed me when you had the chance." The horn blared again. The fight wasn't over. It had just begun. The arena was no longer just a battleground. It had become a slaughterhouse. Dane Carter stood alone, surrounded by the mangled corpses of some of the galaxy's most feared warriors. Vierok the Red, Krogoth the Flayer, and Torvak the Thunder, all dead. Their blood pooled in the sand, their bodies motionless. And the human? Still standing. His breathing was controlled, his grip on the warhammer firm. A deep cut bled freely down his arm, but he ignored it. Pain was nothing. Pain meant he was still alive. The silence was thick, unnatural. For the first time in centuries, fear had gripped the Dome of Titans. The Kroganath Juggernauts, once so eager to laugh, now stared at the arena floor, processing the impossible truth. A human had killed their best warriors. And he was far from finished. The commander's wrath. A thunderous roar shattered the silence. Above the arena, seated on a throne of bones, was Gorzon the Hollow, supreme commander of the Kroganath Warbrood. His three-jawed maw twisted into a snarl of unfiltered rage. Enough of this madness. Gorzon's voice boomed across the Colosseum. How is this pathetic creature still breathing? He slammed his fist onto the armrest of his throne. His 6 crimson eyes burned with hatred and disbelief. His champion was dead. His warriors were disgraced. And now the crowd, his own people, were beginning to question their dominance. "This is no warrior," Gorzon growled, pointing a clawed finger at Dane. "This is a pest. A mistake. A disease that must be erased." A beastly cheer erupted from the Juggernaut warlords surrounding him. Dane Carter had just become a problem. And the Kroganath never let problems live. The elite enter. A new gate rumbled open at the far end of the arena. The air grew heavy, charged with something darker than before. From the shadows, 6 figures emerged, their black armor gleaming under the stadium lights. They weren't ordinary warriors. They were the Hollowborn, the personal executioners of Gorzon. 6 elite killers, trained in the art of systematic slaughter. Each one had survived hundreds of battles, claimed thousands of lives, and never, not once, lost in the arena. They walked with a calm precision, their weapons dripping with the blood of past victims. And now, they were here for him. The stalk and the prey. Dane didn't move. He studied them, eyes flicking over their weapons, their postures, their breathing. They weren't like the others. They weren't brutes who relied on size and strength. They were tacticians, killers, and they were watching him just as intently. Then, they vanished. No sound, no warning. 1 second they were there. The next, gone. Dane's instincts screamed at him. He barely had time to react as the first attack came from behind. A vibro dagger swiped for his throat, moving at blinding speed. Dane dropped low, the blade missing by a fraction of an inch. He twisted, lashing out with the warhammer, but his attacker had already disappeared again. They were toying with him, trying to rattle him, make him panic. It wouldn't work. Dane had fought ghosts before. The first kill. His eyes flicked to the arena sand. Footprints. Subtle. Faint. But there. Dane reacted instantly. He twisted mid-step, swinging the warhammer in a brutal upward arc. Crunch. A hollow-born assassin materialized out of thin air, his chest caved in, ribs shattered like glass. He let out a sick gurgle, blood spilling from his mouth. Dane didn't stop. He snatched the vibro dagger from the dying warrior's grasp and flung it straight into the throat of the next hollowborn. 2 down. 4 left. The crowd screamed in disbelief. Even Gozon's snarl faltered. This human was not prey. He was a predator. The trap. Dane felt the shift in the air. The hollowborn were done playing. A whip chain lashed toward him from the left. He barely dodged before another blade whistled from the right. Too many attacks. Too fast. For the first time, he was forced back. A leg sweep sent him tumbling. The last 2 hollowborns struck together, vibro blades flashing in deadly arcs. Dane barely managed to parry one, but the second blade sliced across his ribs. Pain exploded in his side. He hit the ground, rolling, trying to find an opening. The hollowborn closed in for the final kill. Then, a low growl rumbled from the stadium's beast pit. And the air shifted. The beast unleashed. Gozon rose from his throne. Enough, he snarled. A massive iron gate slammed open. From the depths of the pit, something moved. The ground shook. A monstrous shape slithered into the arena. The Dreadmaw. The Kroganatha's deadliest war beast. A 40-foot serpent, its black scales armored with spiked plating, its jaw filled with rotating teeth designed to grind flesh to pulp. It had ended hundreds of gladiators. And now, it was coming for him. The human problem. The hollowborn retreated instantly, moving to the arena walls. This wasn't a fight anymore. This was an execution. The crowd chanted, roaring for blood. Dane wiped blood from his mouth. He looked up at Gozon, who watched from above, his expression triumphant. Now, human, Gozon sneered. You die like the animal you are. The Dreadmaw lunged. Dane exhaled. He wasn't thinking about dying. He was thinking about how he was going to kill a goddamn monster. The Dreadmaw roared, shaking the entire arena. Its serpentine body coiled, the thick black scales gleaming under the arena lights, each plate reinforced with jagged ridges to shred anything foolish enough to strike. The beast had no eyes. It didn't need them. It hunted by scent and vibration, its sensitive tendrils flicking through the air, already locking onto Dane's presence. Above the carnage, Gozon stood on his throne, arms crossed, watching. This wasn't just about killing the human anymore. This was about making an example. The Kroganath Juggernauts in the stands weren't just warriors. They were conquerors. If the legend of Dane Carter was allowed to grow, it wouldn't just stain their pride. It would weaken their rule. Die screaming, human, Gozon muttered. And with a flick of his clawed hand, the Dreadmaw lunged. The first strike. Dane dodged left, barely escaping as the Dreadmaw's massive jaw slammed into the sand where he had stood. A shockwave of air and dust blasted outward from the impact. The rows of rotating fangs whirred like industrial saws, chewing up chunks of stone and metal. Dane's mind worked overtime. Too big to kill conventionally. Its scales were too thick for his warhammer. It didn't rely on sight, only movement and scent. Which meant he had to fight smart. Testing the beast. Dane rolled under its body, narrowly avoiding another crushing strike. The beast reacted instantly, its head whipping around, snapping toward him like a sledgehammer of teeth and death. He dove behind a fallen pillar. SHRKKK. The Dreadmaul's fangs tore through the stone like paper, obliterating the column in a single chomp. Dane cursed. No cover. No escape. He had seconds to act before the beast struck again. And he wasn't about to die on his knees. The mind of a hunter. He focused on the Dreadmaul's attack patterns. It struck in a straight line. It always coiled before lunging. It followed the smallest movements. Dane exhaled slowly. That meant the key to killing it was making it kill itself. The trap. Dane sprinted toward the arena wall, dodging another earth-shattering bite. The crowd roared, thinking he was trying to escape. Gorzon laughed from above. Run, human. Run to your end. Dane wasn't running. He was baiting the monster. He reached the wall just as the Dreadmaul lunged again, its jaw unhinging, rotating teeth ready to devour him whole. At the last second, Dane leapt. His fingers found a hidden handhold in the wall, and he pulled himself up just as. Boom! The Dreadmaul's head slammed full force into the reinforced barrier. The impact sent cracks racing through the stone, shaking the entire stadium. The beast reeled, stunned, bleeding from its armored snout. The crowd gasped. It had never missed before. Until now. A killer's instinct. Dane didn't give it time to recover. He leapt from the wall, landing on the beast's back. The Dreadmaul shrieked, thrashing violently, trying to shake him off. Dane held on, gripping one of its spiked ridges, using the creature's own armor as leverage. He reached for his warhammer. This wouldn't be a quick kill. He was going to break it piece by piece. Breaking the monster. Dane swung the warhammer down. Crack. The first scale dented, blood seeping through the impact. The Dreadmaul screamed. He swung again. Crack. Another dent. The beast rolled, trying to crush him under its weight. Dane barely leapt aside before it slammed itself into the sand, its own body wounding itself in the process. The monster staggered, its movements sluggish now, blood dripping from gaping wounds across its back. It wasn't used to pain. It wasn't used to being hunted. For the first time, the Dreadmaul felt fey. The final blow. Dane landed a few feet away, watching as the Dreadmaul swayed, weakened but still dangerous. One final move. One chance to end it. Dane sprinted forward as the beast reared up for one last strike. The jaws snapped forward. Dane leapt directly into its open mouth. The crowd gasped in horror. Had he just thrown his life away? Gorzon grinned savagely. Fool. The Dreadmaul snapped its jaws shut. But before it could fully bite down, something happened. A wet, sickening crunch echoed through the stadium. And then, the Dreadmaul froze. Its body twitched. Its tendrils spasmed violently. Then, its head exploded. A warhammer burst through its skull, covered in blood and shattered bone. And from inside the beast's corpse, Dane Carter crawled out, drenched in the monster's remains. Still alive. Still standing. The arena fell silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Because the unthinkable had happened. The Dreadmaul, the most feared beast in Kroganath history, was dead. Killed by a human. The silence breaks. Dane wiped blood from his face. His blue eyes locked onto Gorzon's throne. The Kroganath commander, the warlord who had orchestrated his capture, who had laughed as Dane was thrown into this nightmare, now stared down at him, his 6 crimson eyes wide in disbelief. Dane raised his warhammer. And for the first time in Kroganath history, a human challenged a warlord. The silence shattered as the crowd erupted into pandemonium. Some cheered in wild, savage admiration. Others howled in fury, demanding Dane's execution. But one thing was clear. Dane Carter was not a victim. He was a legend. And the war had just begun. The Dreadmaul's corpse lay in the sand, its massive form twitching as its lifeblood pooled beneath it. Dane stood atop its carcass, his warhammer dripping with gore, his chest heaving. The crowd had erupted into madness. Some roared in admiration, their warrior instincts recognizing the sheer dominance of the human gladiator. Others howled in outrage, demanding Dane be executed immediately for defying their empire. But above them all, Gorzon sat frozen, his massive form still as stone. For the first time in his life, he felt something dangerously close to fear. The challenge. Dane lifted his warhammer, its blooded head reflecting the arena's harsh lights. And then, he pointed it directly at Gorzon's throne. The meaning was unmistakable. A challenge. A gladiator had just called out the warlord himself. The arena went dead silent. Even the most brutal Kroganath warriors knew the implications of this moment. In their culture, a direct challenge of this kind was irrefutable. It was ancient law. A duel to the death. Gorzon had no choice. He could either fight the human, or he could surrender his title and disgrace. And warlords do not surrender. The massive Kroganath warlord rose to his feet. His massive crimson cape billowed behind him as he descended the throne, his massive clawed feet stomping onto the battlefield. The ground shook beneath his weight. The six-bladed war axe on his back clanked heavily as he pulled it free. His full crimson eyes burned with fury. "You challenge me." Gorzon growled, his voice rumbling like an earthquake. Dane spat blood onto the sand. "No. I'm here to bury you." The crowd exploded. The final battle had begun. A monster in flesh. Gorzon didn't hesitate. The moment his boots hit the sand, he charged. His massive war axe swung downward with earth-shattering force, enough to cleave a tank in half. Dane rolled aside, barely avoiding being split in two. The axe struck the ground, sending up an explosion of dust and debris. Dane countered. He swung his warhammer into Gorzon's ribs. Crack. The warlord barely flinched. Dane felt like he had just slammed his hammer into a mountain. Gorzon's massive gauntlet shot out like a sledgehammer, catching Dane mid-movement. Boom. The force sent Dane flying, his body slamming into the arena wall with bone-cracking impact. Pain exploded in his chest. He rolled to his feet, vision swimming. But there was no time to recover. Gorzon was already on him. Strength versus strategy. Dane had fought monsters, gladiators, and beasts. But this was something else entirely. The warlord's strength was beyond human comprehension. Each attack was a hurricane of destruction. Dane dodged another axe swing, barely managing to duck as the six-bladed edge carved a scar into the wall behind him. Gorzon wasn't just strong. He was fast. Faster than a creature of his size should be. Dane had to change tactics. Fighting head-on was suicide. He needed to wear the warlord down. Bleeding a monster. Dane focused on precision. Every dodge was closer, every counter faster. He targeted weak points. Behind the knees. The exposed tendons. The joints of Gorzon's armor. Every strike was a scalpel, cutting small but crucial wounds. And slowly, the warlord started bleeding. The crowd saw it. The unstoppable conqueror was taking damage. But Gorzon only grinned. Good. He licked his fangs. I was worried you'd die too fast. Then he switched styles. The unleashed beast. Gorzon dropped his axe. Dane's instinct screamed. Too late. The warlord lunged, his clawed hands grabbing Dane's throat. Before Dane could react. Boom. Gorzon slammed him into the ground. Sand and blood exploded outward. Dane gasped. The warlord's knee crushed into his ribs, pinning him down. The claws around his throat tightened. Darkness started creeping in. Gorzon leaned down. I'll enjoy snapping your spine, human. The kill shot. Dane's hands scrambled, searching for anything. His fingers brushed against the broken blade of a fallen gladiator. He snatched it up and drove it into Gorzon's eye. SHRKKK. The warlord roared in agony, releasing Dane as he staggered back, clawing at his bleeding face. Dane rolled to his feet, gasping for breath. This was his chance. He gripped his warhammer and charged, ending the warlord. Gorzon saw the attack too late. Dane leapt, bringing the warhammer down with everything he had. The blow landed directly on the warlord's skull. Crack! The arena shook. A sickening crunch echoed through the air. Gorzon's massive form collapsed to his knees. His eyes, full of rage, flickered. Dane stared into them. You lost. And then he swung again. This time, the warlord's skull shattered completely. Gorzon's massive body slumped forward. Dead. Silence. The arena erupts. The Kroganath warriors in the stands froze. Their warlord was dead. Killed by a human. Dane turned, lifting the warhammer over his head. And the impossible happened. Some of the Kroganath warriors roared in approval. They were a warrior race. And Dane Carter had just proven himself the strongest among them. Then, from the throne, one of Gozon's war captains stepped forward. He stared at Dane, then slammed his fist to his chest. A sign of respect. Others followed. One by one, the warriors of the Kroganath bowed to the human gladiator. Dane Carter was no longer a slave. He was no longer a prisoner. He had become something far more dangerous. A conqueror. The legend begins. Dane stood over the warlord's corpse, breathing heavily. He had come to this arena a captive. He was leaving as a king. The Kroganath Empire had been built on domination. And now, they had just witnessed their own rule collapse in a single moment. Because a human had taken their crown. And the galaxy would never be the same.